Hello and welcome back to the GameDev show, everybody. I'm here with Andrew and Yorai today. We're going to be talking about performance, some unsafe code, some awesome new art, and cool blending stuff, and multiplayer game development, along with whatever other topics come up and whatever people in chat would like to discuss as well. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and say hi and chat to everyone, and we'll get started. You guys want to just briefly say hi? Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Andrew, that's perfect. All right, so I think before we dive into my stuff, I wanted to hear a little bit about what Yorai was talking about. We were talking about a couple things before this chat, and Yorai was mentioning something about unsafe code, talking to Johnny, and working in dots. And I figured this is probably much more interesting than my multiplayer fumbles and stuff. So, can you just share what's going on? You all right? What's new?
So on the unsafe code first, back at work, I've been trying to handle some code that really needs tight performance. And as you know, Terraria works in XNA, which is its own engine that's deprecated years ago. And one of the things that you do there is that you have a class called a sprite batch. And the sprite batch lets you make draw calls for sprites, and it will batch those calls and make sure they're done in a more performant way. But this class has its own limitations. For example, when you ask it to draw a sprite, you can only state the position in a single color. But in reality, what actually happens is that there are 4 points that are used for vertex colors, and when you set that color, it actually sets that to all 4 points. And one of the things we do in Terraria is that some of the art has smooth shading. And this smooth shading is done on the vertex color stuff. So we have our own tile batcher class, which is like a sprite batch, but uses unsafe code and lets you set all the 4 vector colors when you make the call request, the draw request. And I've had to update it with some new features. And along the way, I found that some stuff were not done properly, which was very disturbing because we've been using it for 7 years or so. So I've had to learn to get comfortable with unsafe code, and I wrote some extension to that, and I wrote some new stuff that use unsafe code. It was a lot of fun. And while I wasn't that high of knowing unsafe code better, I figured I may as well jump into dots because I remember seeing something that was unsafe there. And I basically started pouring over the entire documentation. I've had like 20 tabs of Johnny's videos open. I've looked at 20 GitHub projects. By the way, the dots documentation and the sample projects are amazing. So I've basically been spending every single moment of my free time of the past 2 weeks doing that, among other things. Like
just diving into it. Can you explain what unsafe code is for people who've never seen the term or heard it or seen the keywords? I know what it is you're talking about specifically.
Yeah, so I am myself not that versed in unsafe code, but the premise is that when you use a managed language like C# and you have code that references objects that live in the memory, there are a lot of safety checks done so that you can not worry about managing your own memory. So for example, when you make a new object, somewhere out there, the application allocates memory for you. But when you stop using that object, you never say, okay, you can dispose this now, usually with C#. And what the C#, one of the features with C# is that there is a manager somewhere out there that says, okay, I see he stopped using that. The next time I'm collecting garbage, this goes away. And with unsafe code, you can do a lot of stuff that completely eliminates all the checks that this manager has to do for you. And this lets you cut down on the instructions that you call, saving you on performance. It also, so one of the big things about that is that when you're fetching objects, you usually may say, say you have an array of game objects, just as an example. Every single time you go through that array, you basically go into the array object indexer, which is a method of its own, to those who don't know. And then in that indexer, it's checking if you're in the bounds of the array. Then after that, it goes into figuring out where the address of that asset is. It's grabbing it, it's converting it to whatever it needs to, and it gives it back to you. All of this process takes time, even if you think it's incredibly fast, even if you heard that arrays are the fastest thing ever out of all the collection types available. There are still some instructions there that could be cut out. And when you use unsafe code, specifically when you're trying to use a bunch of stuff that are tightly placed together in memory, there's a lot of savings you can do by just using an unsafe pointer to the start of the array, and then just telling the code, hey, I don't care what you're doing with garbage collection. Nothing is going wrong is going to happen here. Give me a moment, I'm doing my thing. Then you can just start iterating on the memory addresses of that array. You already know what type you're dealing with. You already know where everything is. It lets you cut down on the array indexer stuff. It lets you cut down on the conversion stuff. It lets you just start writing code that is more performant because you're cutting down on the instructions that you would otherwise go through, even though you know what you're doing. So yes,
There's a question here about this, and I think there's a lot to dive into, but it says they imagine that unsafe code is the birth of most memory leaks, and I think most is definitely not the right terminology, but some, and there are lots of other potential pitfalls too. Do you want to just share a couple or a little bit of what can go wrong? Why you don't use unsafe code by default and you use it for those things where you really need to push performance at scale?
Yeah, so usually you don't need that performance, as you just implied with your own message. But when you do, and you use unsafe code, you have to explicitly know what you're doing, because unsafe code means you are pointing somewhere in memory and you can write whatever you want. So if you would say, I have an array of 5 items, but I'm going to write to the 100th item, an array would stop you. It has an indexer, it knows what it's doing. Unsafe code would not. You can start writing things to the middle of, I don't know, a string somewhere in the ether, which is, by the way, something that you shouldn't be able to do because strings are supposed to be immutable.
Or
But
you
you
could
can
have
with
your
unsafe
quest
code.
data overwrite your inventory item partially and bug everything out and crash your server. From
Yeah,
experience. Definitely seen that happen.
yeah. So this is one of them. The other thing is when you're moving stuff around, it is easier to be mistaken with what you're actually transferring, because people who usually don't deal with unsafe code think about an object reference as an object reference, but what you actually have is a pointer, which is not the object reference itself. You could be passing in basically where the object is, but you don't necessarily know its type. So there's a lot of like really small stuff in there that would matter. But yeah, so that was the part about the unsafe code usage. Now, with Dots, I didn't actually need to use any unsafe code as far as I'm aware yet, because Dots has a lot of source generation, and this source generation is really, really fun, um, especially with Writer, because one thing that I've been doing is that as I'm seeing myself writing code in certain ways, I've started making templates for the code based on Johnny's advice, which lets you write code that is smaller than the entire piece of code that you need, that already figures out what you wanted to write. Then that code is actually partial, and it goes into the code generation, and it generates more code that you know that you need, but you already know how to write. And then that code gets used in Dots. So from a really small chunk, you're basically generating 2 whole classes and a lot of small internal stuff. It's really fun to think about.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the code itself is actually really clean and linear. Like I've had almost no issues whatsoever when I was working on Dots, and everything that I knew was going wrong, I knew was my fault, and I knew how to find it in the documentation and the inspector within like 5 minutes. I've actually been in the talk with Jason Story and the rest of his Discord server on voice chat last night. And as we were talking, I was messing with my Dots project, and I was like, why is this happening? And I was like literally browsing through the systems, tucking them out, what I was doing. And it was like a really clean experience. I really love how it's working compared to mono behaviors right now.
Nice. So are you actually like building a full game in dots or just kind of experimenting, or where are you at with that?
So I've had a small idea where I wanted to like have a single character fighting an army of, enemies running at it, and I've initially done that with mono behaviors. And as soon as I've decided, okay, I've written enough scripts, I know they're as optimized as I can make them without substepping mono behaviors update calls. Um, and I basically said, okay, now that I know this works with 50 enemies, let me spawn 2,000. My FPS dropped so bad, you have no idea. And the reason it dropped was nothing else except update calls. Because every single mono behavior had its own two scripts that had an update method. Now, I
Yeah.
already know from Unity's recommendation themselves, if you're having this many entities doing updates, you should actually be using something that batches these updates and calls them linearly, so you don't have to go through every single model behavior update call. But I didn't want to do that because that's like beating the entire point of writing clean code with model behaviors.
It's not
So
that difficult. I mean, you just write one script and it's 10 minutes of work to manually call those updates yourself.
yeah, but I mean, you have to register them, and you have to have a space for those registers to happen, and then you have to also manage this when this happens, and you know,
It's like 10
it's
minutes.
what?
Let's be fair though. You did choose the hard option. It really is like
Yeah.
10 minutes to write a script, to find all the things, add them to a list
Yeah,
and
yeah,
update
yeah. But
them. Like
the,
it's not
I
as much
know it.
fun.
I know it's 4 minutes of work to make this happen. The thing is, though, why would I when I know I'm going to face more problems down the road, and I don't want to have to start making everything aggregate through that if I plan to have 10,000 enemies, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
10
I,
scripts, 10,000 enemies. That's going to be 100,000 things being
that's a
managed by
lot of
this one.
scripts.
Yeah, but I mean, when you have an army-based game and you're not trying to cheat and you're actually trying to have fully fledged entity per, you know, thing on screen, it's not going to be as simple as here is a squad unit that actually just has 25 meshes. It's not what I'm trying to do. um, so basically, I've said, screw it, dots time. So I literally just went into dots. I made a script that spawns 10,000 enemies with physics enabled, Unity physics specifically. I pressed play, and it worked wonders. I've had more than 160 FPS, which is my refresh rate, with that amount of enemies. I think my frame time is like 3 milliseconds.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I was really impressed. And then I pumped it up even higher, and then I started making them run towards a player. That's when something went wrong. And I sent Unity a bug with that because I know this isn't my fault after many minutes of debugging. um, but I figured out how to curb this issue. And other than that, it's working perfectly well.
So are you gonna convert? Have you converted over to the full functionality to dots that you had in the mono behavior one, or just started with it?
So I started converting the entire functionality.
Mhm.
Then I had too much fun with the documentation, and I started exploring things I didn't even plan to do. So,
Nice. Started diving in.
yeah. So the documentation is really, really um, expanded compared to what I tend to find with mono behaviors, where you just have like, here is a method, here is how you use it. They are explaining an entire philosophy to you, and the best practices are included with each thing, and they're giving you notes to remember stuff that are important. Um, and in addition to that, there is a whole Unity ECS samples repository that is full of really nice examples of how to do things. And while I didn't download it, I'm actually browsing through it and I'm taking notes as I go because there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. They have samples for physics, they have samples for ECS, they are split by beginner stuff. They have a project called Hello Cube, and then there's an advanced section where they actually have pathfinding and some other stuff in there. There are also examples for European HDRPs you're seeing. This is specifically for components that lets you set the hybrid renderer to draw specific stuff. Johnny has a great video about this, by the way. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking through this all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to spend some time with dots. Everybody talks about how great it is, but I feel like I'm getting outdated on it, and I'm falling behind. I need to really dive in and actually build something. I've watched a lot of talks and seen a lot of people do it, but I feel like it's hard for me to lock it in until I actually start building another game out with it or something.
So here's an interesting bit about this. The scripts that you have to write are actually really smaller compared to what they used to be 2 years ago, if you remember those.
Yes.
You can get, with like 6 lines of code, a fully working system that does whatever you ask it to do. It's really clean. Like it's literally within 3 to 4 lines difference from what you do with mono behaviors, and you can make those 3-4 lines be just something that you do with Rider, so you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
And with the samples, which I said you dropped down because I wanted to show something there.
Oh, I'll
if
put
you
them
can
back
bring it
up.
up. Yeah.
Let me bring them back up 1 second. Let me switch. I'm gonna switch. I just want to switch to a monitor so I can easily switch back and forth without having to unshare and reshare. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So if you go up to the root of the repository where you select the folders,
Oh wait, where did it go?
Go to the top and click the entity content system samples.
It was the zoom.
Yeah.
I was zoomed
okay.
in too much, so it was hiding everything.
Okay, so press ECS samples, then assets, then hello cube. Now pick any one of these because it's really fun.
She spawned from mono behavior.
Now scroll down. There is a full explanation of what each of these projects do and what to go through with them. And there's a Unity scene, and you can open it up and see what's in there. And there's also scripts specifically for that scene within every single one of these projects. So it's been a breeze to go through and understand what you need to learn. And they have notes that link to the documentation, and that documentation is actually really detailed. So I've actually been stepping through it and trying to find like hidden gems. And they're making it really easy because they're pointing them out with big blue notes. So this was my fun of the day. Entity command buffers are pretty important with dots, and there's some stuff there that I haven't seen a single YouTuber use yet, and I think they're pretty important. the stuff with the blue notes and at the bottom. But yeah, the entire documentation is filled with these blue notes as you scroll down a bit. You'll see like big blue snippets. There you go. Every single one of these is a treasure. I haven't found one that wasn't like important to know about. It's a read, but it's really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of info here. This looks interesting, though. Like you kind of mentioned before, when I first got into dots, there wasn't a lot of info out there, and it was super verbose. It took a lot, and it seems I've been watching a lot of stuff, like I said, on dots, but it seems like it's gotten a lot easier. I just need to actually dive in and use it myself. So I'm glad to see that you're enjoying it, though. Getting some good feedback from it, because before I'd always hear people struggling and stuff. Yeah, it seems like you and Johnny. I guess I've been talking to you and Johnny a lot more, though. So probably helps.
So I might have a misconception on dots. I don't know if others watching shared this, but I always thought that dots was like, oh, if you use dots, you're using dots. If you're not using dots, you're not using dots. And like it was either go with mono behaviors and the more traditional way of doing a Unity project, or use dots. You have to make a decision.
You don't. You can actually use both entirely perfectly fine together in tandem. The only thing that does happen is that when there is information within Dots' own little world, you actually have to make something, one of the systems within that world, get that information, and then you can access it from a mono behavior perfectly cleanly. So, for example, I have the number of enemies in my Dots world. None of them have a game object, but I have a single system that's like 3 lines of code that says every frame grab the number of enemies and just keep it. Then I have a mono behavior using Unity UI that literally just says get that world, get that system, and set your text mesh pro text to the number of enemies. And I have another game object that just has a transform, but there is an ECS component that says copy your position in the world to a game object transform. So that transform is actually following something in the ECS world, and I have my camera following that game object transform.
Mm.
So it's a perfect harmony, and like there's literally no issues whatsoever. I even have a script that sets systems variables so that when the system runs, it actually affects all the things in the dots world perfectly cleanly. And you can make like direct iterations, like just kill 5 enemies from the ECS world from a mono behavior immediately. Now, if you're trying to get maximum performance, you shouldn't be doing that too often. You want to try and keep everything you can within the ECS side. But it's really not that different a code.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's the experimental, so production and stuff.
I think that's somewhat new, right? The whole kind of mixing. It's initially it was very separated. It was very difficult to kind of use both together, but now they've been really pushing towards it. They talked a bit about that at the conference too, and when I talked to the Dots team, they're very on board with like making it so that it's not a whole giant switch, and that you can use the parts that you need, and then merge over or change your workflow slowly as needed, if you need to, depending on the game.
So here's the thing: when you use dots, everything lives in the ECS world. If they didn't implement everything for ECS, then you are missing features. And when people started using dots, there was a problem because there were missing features. People just asked, okay, how do I make this work? And there was a hack back at the time that you would like literally just get all the entity positions and state, and you would move that over to something that mono behaviors can consume and use that. But it was really tedious to do. So they've added components that say, you know what, here is something cleaner, easier. We have a system of our own that does all of that for you. Just slap this component in the ECS side and you're done. And this works perfectly well, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't bumped into a single issue with that yet. At best, the only problem I've had was there is a very interesting separation between a position of something and the display of where that something is in ECS. You know how with mono behaviors, you have a transform, and that transform has a position and a rotation, and that gets used for rendering, right? In ECS, there's a third piece here, which is called a local to world. And this local to world is not necessarily synced to the position and rotation of your entity. So what you can do is you have a true position, a true rotation, and then a visual local to world. And every single frame, you can nudge that local to world to wherever you want. And the next frame, there's a system that takes this position and rotation and sets it back to local to world. So it keeps resetting, and you can keep pushing it wherever you want. Now, something that I didn't know at the beginning is that rigid bodies, you know how they have an interpolation feature where, like, if you move between fixed time steps, they will still look smooth as they move?
Yeah.
In the mono behavior side, you couldn't actually mess with that. As soon as you put something in interpolation, you couldn't exactly know what true point is it at, because the transform wouldn't always be accurate. But with ECS, what they're doing is they have a system called smooth rigid bodies, local to world, and that one is the one that's responsible for nudging the local to world so it looks interpolated, while the position and rotation are still the real values. And this is incredibly powerful.
What are you using it for? Okay.
Well, at first I was using it, or rather, at first I was not using it, and I just said, I want to follow this transform so that I can set my camera to look at it. And the transform was not moving with the smoothed position, and I was asking, what is going on here? This works with mono behaviors. So I went on into, so I paused the play mode, and I looked at the inspector. There's a systems tab. And one of the things really great about dots is that there is no magic. Everything that is in the systems tab can be toggled on and off. And you can see its name, and you know at what order is it running. So I know where my system is. So at first I made sure that it runs after everything related to transforms. Then it was still not right. So I looked into what I have there, and there was a group called Smooth Rigid Bodies, and I figured, oh, this must be the one that says the transform, but I'm after it. So what is going on here? So I clicked it, and I've seen that it's actually messing with the local to world. And then I went to the documentation for the Smooth Rigid Bodies system, and they explicitly say that it only messes with the local to world, and that it's not setting the transform and rotation. So you should be using local to world to get a position. And then I literally solved it. It was like a 5-minute process.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to remember all this stuff. I'm sure I'm gonna bug the crap out of you the second I start building a dots project.
Yeah, feel free.
Or messaging you and Johnny nonstop because I'm gonna get lost. But I want to do that sometime soon after I finish up this this next game. I want to share that in a minute too. But first, I wanted to also let Andrew talk a little bit about this treant because it was really fucking cool.
Yeah.
Let me pop it up.
So I do want to say about dots. It sounds easier than it was when I was first introduced to it, probably 3 or 4 years ago, and they had that demo of like huge armies, and it's like, wow, that's impressive, but also the code is what the heck, you know. But it sounds like it's still complicated, but a lot less complicated, and the idea that you can bridge the two or merge the two, that sort of makes it easier to play with without thinking I have to change everything if I'm going to do this. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Good to hear that there's it's a little simpler.
I agree.
Yeah. So
real quick, I just want to tell everybody, if you wanted to win a copy of Rider, JetBrains Rider, 1-year license, just enter the giveaway. It's running in the background right now. You can enter, just choose your race and class, and then I want to actually pop up your thing and have you talk about it because it is freaking awesome. All right, here it is. Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah, so Andrew. This is the new treant character we've been working on, and we just released it this 2 days ago? 2 days ago now on the App Store. So it's got the new release discount. I'm sure Jason will put the code with his affiliate link somewhere.
It's already linked down below in the description.
There you go.
Ready to go.
Yeah, so this character, there's nothing. We do lots of characters. We got dozens of characters, and this is just another one. Except there's some cool new things that I added for this one that are worthy of a brief mention. I think the first one you see in the video here, the morphing of the blend shapes, where he's getting bigger and smaller and all that. Jason is always whenever we show a video, mostly the Minotaur, and he always says his favorite part is when you can see that sliding. So I was actually sitting outside of Starbucks, and I had one of those experiences where the code just worked the first time, because I thought to myself, I've tried to do this before where it could blend live in the game, but I always failed. So let me go back into this code, and I realized that my blend shape script is older and it needs to be refactored anyways, but I didn't do that part. Instead, I was able to get this working where now you can choose to, of course, set blend shape values. So you can make a character bigger or smaller. The spikes on this, you can make them tall. You can make them non-existent at all. But now you can also have a new method that lets you blend from one shape to another shape preset. So it's not just blending a single shape, but rather an entire shape, whether it's a preset one, like in the demo scene, I've got a skinny one, and I've got a fat one, and then I've got the randomize button. And if you do the randomize button, it will randomize it, but then smoothly, blend to that from its current shape over whatever time period you select, and it produces that nice value, which means that in the game itself, you could, of course, have a magic spell that makes something bigger. If you cast, with this new thing on the humans, and you want to cast a strength spell, you could actually see muscles grow a little bit, and you could see that live in the game. And for the treant, I think the two big things, besides the just general size, the spikes growing would be a really cool effect, and also the head. The head is able to shrink really small and get really big, and that head growing would be really neat too, I think, in a game. So that is one of the things I added that I think is just really, I wanted to add it a long time ago. I just couldn't figure it out. And this last week, I got a little bit better at enumerators, which is just something I was never quite skilled at for some reason. And because of that, I was able to get it working. So that was one thing. And the other thing is, this time Katie, who's a wonderful animator, and I've been working with her for 7 years on these characters. I told her just, she knows what to do. So I was like, just make animations. Like, I do whatever you think looks cool. And she came back with, I didn't count, but it's probably a couple dozen animations, way more than we usually do. 4 different levels of forward locomotion speed.
Head,
3.
Sorry. Watching the head like go.
Oh yeah, make your head explode. 3 or 4 idle animations, and I was sitting there thinking. I think it was on a walk when this is the value of walks. I was on a walk when I thought, can I blend those animations? And I thought so. So yeah, there's no reason why we can't just dynamically blend animations together in a unique way to make idle loops not look like loops as much. And so even in this shot you're seeing here, this is the dynamic animation is what I'm calling it for the idle, where there's 3 different idle animations, one that's really calm and one that's really aggressive where he's like just kind of pounding his arms, and one where he's in the middle of the two where he's kind of tired. So there's the calm one. And the script is automatically taking the value from 0 to 1, choosing a random value, lerping to that at a random speed, and then repeating it at a random period, essentially creating a system where if you had dozens of these on the screen at once, you could have all of them doing idle animations, but all at different timings, different speeds, different styles. Even some of the other ones, some of the idle break animations are blended between 2 different idle breaks. So there's, as one example, there's an idle break where he goes like this and like moves his arm around. There's another one where he just kind of goes around. And now whenever you click idle break, it's like, could go here, could just look around. Maybe his arm comes up a little bit and it just like kind of looks around like this, but it's always going to be slightly different. And certainly, it produces something that's just slightly more unique every single time you use it. So if you're going to see the same animation over and over, you can go kind of crazy. The last thing that also enabled is directional got hit animations, which I think we're going to now add this to every character that we create. Basically, instead of just 1 got hit animation, we'll have 4, 1 from the front, 1 from the back, 2 from each side. And this is the part right here where he gets hit from this ball that spawns randomly in one of the directions, and then the animator will blend between the got hit animations based on the direction he got hit from. Very simple concept. I'm sure there are people on this call right now who have said, yeah, I've been doing this for years. I hadn't. And
But most
a lot of
characters
people
don't
hadn't.
come with those animations to be able to do it. So that's where you're really setting it apart, and then having the example there to show how to do it, I think is freaking great.
Yeah.
I actually have multiple questions about this.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've been looking at this the entire time, and there is one thing you haven't covered at all, which is at some of these blend shapes, sap or charred skin shows up, like glowing bits, and that doesn't seem to be a blend shape, does it?
It's not. That is a texture. So the package comes with 5 textures. One of them is like a charred wood texture, and so it's probably switching to that one. There's one that has a missive that looks like it's kind of glowing, and a couple more that are various types of wood or petrified wood.
And you've been blending between those, or was that a direct
swap with
just a video?
No, it was just a video. It could have been a little bit of the motion blur as well. With Unity's motion blur, it will look like it's blending between 2, but it's really just the motion blur.
Okay.
But I was thinking I should probably write a shader where you can blend between 2. So
yeah, I think there's actually a feature on the base shader that you can use for this. I'll have to double check.
There's the detail one.
Yeah, and I think there is something you can set there for blending between detail and the not detail. So you could literally just swap between that and then reach the end one. Also, materials have a direct blend feature. Yeah, you can literally lerp materials, in case you didn't know.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, so they have to be on the same. All it does is it's blending the values within the material, and if they have shared names, they get transferred over pretty well. You could do this between two shaders, but the thing is that it's not going to show you two shaders. It's only going to show you one side. So it's something to consider. If you're using the same type of shader but different material and you're trying to blend, it might work. The thing is, though, it can't change a texture for you. But you can make it look like that with the detail stuff. Just something to consider.
I'll have to look
now-
into that, because I was thinking that would be cool.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I recall with your Minotaur, the blend shapes were by side, right? So you could make the same thing here, or is it entire body based? Like if I want to make giant arms, can I make it just one arm?
Yes, so if you can absolutely do that. If you, in the video, there's when I randomize it, you can see sometime. Well, okay. If your question is right and left side, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't
Okay,
just make one large arm and one small arm.
Okay,
that
so
would be pretty easy though, right, Andrew?
We'd have to update the shapes. So right now, when there's just an arm size, that just affects both arms. So we'd have to go back and make a left arm shape, a right arm shape.
Yeah, but regardless, this is still really good, because what you can do is you can use them not just in terms of customization, from one dog moment to the other. You can actually use this mid animation to anybody watching, where if he's about to make a stomp on the floor, he can raise his leg, and then you can increase the leg size, and then he can stomp, or he can prepare a punch and then make the arm go big, and then make giant punch. If you're using the char texture, you can make it like flaming, and you can add fire effects and embers. Now, regarding getting hit animations, the only last thing that would be needed in order to make this fully compatible with like an action game is knockups, which I assume there are no animations for this. Yeah.
What's a knockup?
So,
Street Fighter.
knocking up
in the
an
air,
enemy,
hit.
like hitting them into the air and letting them fall down and crash. So,
no, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still nice. It's a big enemy, so it's allowed to be knock-up resistant if you make it big.
Yeah. In the animation is actually humanoid, which I thought to myself, oh, well, let's see what happens here. And so my last live stream, we brought in the human character, and as you can imagine, the treant is not quite a human shape. And especially that head is quite low on the neck. So the human did not look right. So while the animations are humanoid, they do not work on the human unless you're looking for a possessed human who looks like a puppet, and like, then it's perfect and ideal, and you should use it. But yeah.
I assume normal human animations look a little weird on him.
Alternatively,
same deal.
Start him really, really skinny, put him inside a human, and then slide it into the big mode, and the human gets covered in treant armor.
It turns into a tree.
What I figure there has to be a way to blend between two meshes with clever coding. I don't know. Obviously, if you had two meshes with the exact same faces, the exact same triangle counts, you could do that just like a blend shape, essentially. But if you have two characters that are completely different, there's got to be a way to kind of figure it out and morph between two in an interesting way.
So there isn't any good one. I've looked into this myself. But there are a lot of ways to hide this, which would be way easier and potentially fancier to do. So one of the big things with games that do transformations like that is that they will make the character fully single color, like glowing white. And as it glows white, they're making a similar shape show up, also glowing fully white. And then as it turns down the color from the glowing whiteness, you're actually just keeping the new shape, and you're making other effects that distract the player from this happening as it goes. Another thing you can do is a dissolve shader, where the big shape dissolves in first, and then as it goes up, the other one gets dissolved down, so disappearing. One other thing is dithering, So you can make some pixels become a miss from the screen while the other ones are there. It's like a transparency trick, but it's opaque hue coherent, respecting the opaque hue.
Yeah.
And you can make the pixels that differ in be the pixels that differ out on the other thing, and it looks like an entire blend that's like really almost seamless as you do that.
Yeah, I would imagine combining those with some method, especially if the characters have changes in size. So you got a human turning into something that's 20 feet tall. You could probably use some system to add markers on key parts. Key like areas that should change. So this elbow is this elbow, this part is this part, and then kind of bring down the big one. Like if you're moving from a small character to a big one, bring down the small one to match that. Use those techniques, both the dithering and the flashing, probably at the same time, so that as it's growing and just lerping from the small to the large, where probably both of them look really weird, you start doing the visual techniques to hide the weirdness, but you see the silhouette grow and it kind of just blends into the right shape. And by the time you see the new character, it's not looking weird anymore.
Yeah, and also if you want to do it the way you mentioned, if the characters play the same animation and they are both humanoids, as you said, there's actually a method within the humanoid avatar data that you can use the animator get human body bone, and you can get every single one of those registered bones already. So you don't even have to make your own manual script for it. There is actually an enum. You can traverse through everything in that enum. Done.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If
So
only
you
I
can
had more
already...
time.
Somebody shared this mesh transform asset in chat too. Have you guys seen this?
I am going to open it up on my end real quick.
I wonder if this does it between different meshes, or is it just with some? It certainly looks very different, but I'm not sure what
Yeah,
this is.
it looks like I don't know. The two in the video, they look
I'm
like
trying
they
to...
have the same shape, and they're doing some sort of blend between the two.
Yeah,
The
more like
zombie is disgusting.
I'm trying to figure out what technique it is using.
like that.
It
Yeah.
said it's mentioning something
Two
about calculating
meshes.
a mesh.
Yeah, in the script on the right, it has fields for two meshes, two UVs. Whether there's a toggle for creating blend shapes.
They also have a lot of parts. If you look at the package content and then the mesh transformation meshes, you can see the stuff that are there, and there's some materials you can... By the way, this is something that everybody should know how to do when you're trying to buy an asset and you're trying to figure out how what it's doing before you buy. The best thing you can do is open the package content and see what files you're actually going to get. There's a lot of times that you try to buy an asset and you don't know how it's working, and it might not be compatible with the way you want it to be. So this is really helpful in figuring these things out.
Like if you want to know if this thing supports different render pipelines, look right
As
there.
an
I do
example,
that all
yeah.
the time though, and a lot of the time what happens is I'll look and see either it doesn't have stuff that I wanted, like things that I was thinking it was going to have, or it has a whole bunch of crap that I wasn't expecting, and then that kind of like pushes me over more quick. If I'm like looking like, oh, there's a giant folder of characters in here or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, let's get that. So, but I always look at these two and then start looking at the actual assets to get an idea of what's in there. Not always, but a lot of the time look at those. A lot of the time I just hit buy now and then I open it up in Unity and try it out because it's on sale. Like, I got to check this thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. By the way, I'm going to kick off the giveaway soon in like the next 15 minutes. So if you wanted to enter to win a copy of JetBrains Rider, it's a 1-year license, totally free. All you got to do is choose a race and class, type them in the YouTube chat, and you will appear as a character and fight to the death, and then the winner will get that. Last week we gave away something to the first loser too. It was which pack was that, Andrew? It was one of your
It's
newer
the
packs.
Scorpion low poly.
The Scorpion low poly pack, yeah. That was cool. Who gave it to the first person to fall?
To Jumbri, who says blend shapes are just mesh deformations should be independent of render pipelines. You're entirely right on that. We're just saying that if there is a shader involved, which is mentioned in the description, then you have to know what render pipelines that shader works with. In addition,
as an example,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying that as an example, different render pipelines might require different textures in order to look right. So you might want to make sure that you actually have the textures that you need for your specific render pipeline if you're using something that's specific. Yeah, go ahead.
In that package we were looking at, the package list showed lightweight render pipeline assets. Now, lightweight render pipeline was renamed to universal render pipeline a couple years ago now, which implies to me that the package has stuff that might not be compatible with the modern URP. So don't expect it to work with URP necessarily, at least out of the box.
Yeah, there is one thing that's interesting though, is that it released on the latest release update is on 2020, which is already the time that URP existed. So it's possible that the overview is the thing that hasn't changed, or the files aren't entirely. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a little bit of use at your own risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's always the case with any asset that's not relatively newly updated, though. Like if I see something that hasn't been updated in like the last 6 months, I just kind of assume like there's a small chance it's not going to work with the latest versions of Unity. If it's a code asset, if it's art, then I just assume it's going to be fine no matter what. It might not look as cool as the newer stuff, but that's it.
Yeah. If it doesn't work in the latest version, you can get a refund if you notice in the first like 2 weeks. But that's where reviews come in play, and that's why I always ask folks, if you do get my stuff, please write a review, because it tells people that this asset still works. This asset works today, and it worked 6 months ago when people 6 months from now read that review, and it goes a long, long way into helping people feel like they should click that button and buy it. So
especially if the review is new. Like if I see something that's like reviewed this week, I'm like, okay, this is definitely like people are actively actually using it, and there don't seem to be problems. So yeah. I think that's definitely
honestly, it's something like, I don't even know the math. It's hard to do the math because there's so little data on it, but probably 3% of actual people will write a review. It's very small, so it's hard to get reviews. So constantly have to ask people for it.
Yeah, so if you got one of Andrew's assets, make sure that you go write a review real quick. I should probably do it too.
Yes,
after this call. Remind me to do it. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
When we're not on. I'll write a review on one of my favorite ones. So somebody Ed asked if the aspects have changed since last week. They have not. I haven't had a chance to change anything. So that's for the battler. The classes and races are exactly the same as they were last week. If you remember what won last week, it might win this week. I honestly haven't got the slightest clue. Looks like we still got lots and lots of dragons in here, though. And again, all you got to do to enter is just choose a racing class. And then, yes, there's a question for Andrew. Are you going to be streaming today? Are you going to do some dev?
I might. Not. It won't be today. It would be tonight if I do it. I'm at my friend's house right now, and if I get home the evening, so it depends how tired I am in the end. Yes, but so I do have stuff I was working on. Yeah, I was just last night. I was working on some stuff here. I wanted to in the game I'm working on. I thought, what would be cool we have a system already. When you hover over a bad guy and you're about to cast a spell or shoot an arrow, it has a target on them, and it's really nice and all that targets them. But it would be really cool if the camera kind of zoomed in a little bit and there was a change in post-processing, maybe some particle effects on the side, like to really get you excited that you're about to shoot something with a magic spell. So I thought that would be cool. So I'm halfway, well, I don't know about halfway, but partway into building that system. So that's why I want to work on, and it's a perfect topic for a stream.
Nice.
Yeah. Speaking of, I watched one of your streams, and you were trying to make a copy of a list. Sorry.
Yes.
And you.
Oh, yes, I remember that one.
Yeah, and you ended up doing it by making a new list and then iterating over all the elements of the original list, and then adding an element based on the element that you're iterating on. You could actually do this with one line. When you make new list, you can actually put another list as one of the arguments in the creation. So you can do new list, old list. and it will actually copy all the elements. It's a shallow copy, so if you need like an actual new object, it's got that. It's just a list
Oh
pointing
yes,
at the same
this was
object.
I needed a new one. Usually I've in the most of the things when I try to do that, I would use JSON to just do a from JSON to JSON thing to clone it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't working on just a list.
I was pretty sure you're only adding elements conditionally and still using the same ones, though. Wasn't that the same one at the time?
I'd have to think.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
remember the moment because I thought, well, I'll do it like this, and it didn't work. I was like, well, let me do it like this. It didn't work. And I'm like, all right, fine, I'll just do it like this. And I did it in a
Yeah.
way that I knew was probably not the right way, but it worked. And so I think, all right, it works.
Okay, so on that note, if you do need a deep copy of something, there isn't a clean one solution fits all to clone a class. But to make it easier for yourself in the future, what you can do is you can implement a clone method that will literally give you a copy of what you're trying to make instead of going through the entire serialization of JSON. And then you can just call that element.clone. And there's actually a whole philosophy about this with the interface iClone or iClonable. I forget how to what is the specific name because IntelliSense exists. But yeah, it's a pretty big topic. In Terraria, we actually do this pretty lazy instantiation, lazy tracking, I should say, of the player's current state, where we clone the player and we call that the net clone. And then as the player changes what they have in their inventory or their health, etc., it's actually comparing the last frame of the player compared to the current frame of the player. And if any of these values are different, they get a net message that says, hey, sync that. So cloning is pretty useful.
Yeah, I remember having to write copy constructors for everything back in the day on all the class. That was such a nightmare. Having to write like one where you could pass one in and it would give you back a clone on some of the old C++ projects and games to work on. And then they would get out of sync because somebody would add something and forget to put it into that constructor. And then there'd be a random bug in the game that went live that nobody noticed. Usually get caught in QA, but every now and then, the stuff gets through. There's lots and lots of stuff here. Yeah, talking about using link for your copies and other things. I wanted to pop up. You started talking about choosing targets and stuff, and I started. This is one of the things I've been playing with, so it got me. I just wanted to pop it up and show you. It's not in a good state at all, but you can actually now select your character. I can go to my ice wall mode, pick my move, and then choose where I want to drop like my walls and put up the little previews. And I was using holograms for a little while. So I grabbed that the hologram sci-fi kit from the Ukraine bundle that was up. And I was using those to like hide and preview and focus my characters and stuff. All of that's turned off now, like the kind of stuff you were just talking about, like focusing it and all that. But I wanted to pop it up and show it anyway because I've been playing with it and having a lot of fun just making a little turn-based multiplayer game. I got it on one character at a time right now, but I do however many characters and players and stuff, and it's all working on netcode for game objects now, using all the new Unity stuff, which has been really fun.
What is that netcode for Unity and new Unity stuff? Can you describe what you're talking about?
It's the network system. So netcode for game objects used to be UNet, and then it used to be ML API. I mean, it shouldn't used to be because I'm sure the code base has been totally scrapped and redone multiple times, but it's the new version of Unity's networking system, like their first-party network system for multiplayer stuff, and it's really easy to use. It felt a lot like UNet, but a little bit easier, with just more stuff kind of built in and simplified. And it's been kind of a blast to work with. I haven't had any problems with it. I expected that it was going to be like a pain to work with and stuff, but nothing at all. Like no problems. Everything just kind of works. The messaging was easy to implement, and getting multiplayer working was good. Now I'm going through the matchmaking stuff. So they have the Unity gaming services. They just released it. I did a video on this last week, but they just released the authentication, the lobby, and a couple other systems. I think the matchmaking one's not done, but the lobby is all the way out and allows you to do basically like, you join into a game. Here, I'll show you what mine looks like right now, which doesn't have a lobby. It's just a LAN lobby, and I'm switching it over to Unity's lobby. So you log in basically, and then you'd see like the right now you have a host and a client button here, and I have my chat set up through Stream's chat system, which is really cool too. I want to finish a video on that really soon. But they've got you can host a game or join as a client, and then with the lobby system, you'd be able to just host and then have like your game show up in the list of games, and then people can click to join it or join by your name instead of just right now you can host and then I can join, but it's all by IP. So it's kind of the matchmaking part of that. And then there was one other thing that I didn't know was coming. Well, I guess I probably had heard about it, but didn't realize was coming until I started really digging into it and playing with, which was the cloud code stuff, which lets you write. It's essentially like lambdas, but it's Unity's version of lambdas that ties into their authentication and economy services and all that stuff. So I'm trying to play with that a little bit too and seeing how much of that makes sense. I think I'm going to use it for my authentication system. I'm going to mix that in with authentication to provide chat tokens and a couple other things, and maybe tie in with some stuff. But I'm trying to figure out like how much of it I want to offload into something like a cloud code versus how much I want to keep locally, and just trying out all of the different services too, and trying to get like wide exposure to them and see how they are. But so far they seem really powerful and just easy to use, which
nice.
I hate to say it, but it hasn't always been the case with Unity stuff, right? Like it's always been the case where I just like drop in a solution and it just works. And this has definitely been very nice, and the examples were pretty good too. So I've been having fun with it. Right now, I don't know. I don't want to show too much of my beautiful game. Let me show you the earlier version of it real quick though. I want to pop that over here because I had that up while I was working on this video. Show you the first version versus the current version, and then tell me which one you like more. So version 1 looked like this. that was that was
very minimal. I like it.
It's just some characters, and they would run towards the I think it works. They'll pick a destination and they run towards each other. And it took about 4 weeks of semi part-time development to turn it into a big multiplayer thing, but I'm still not 100% sure I'm set on like my final theme and all that. I think they should run up there, and then they don't even animate in this version. But I want to try to come up with something that's fun to control and fun for at least 4 players to be able to send their units off, go fight each other, go get some power-ups and stuff. And I'm having I'm gonna show you one more thing in there that I was having a lot of fun with. Sorry, I can't.
All the projects.
Yeah, there was one more thing. Last chance, by the way. If you wanted to win the JetBrains Rider giveaway, you got 1 minute. Go ahead and enter. Choose a race and class. You'll pop up in there, and then we will start the fight, and you can maybe be the winner here. Let me drag this window over here one more time. I wanted to show you I started playing last night with particles because when I can't think anymore and I just want to do something for fun, that's what I do. Like, I can't do anything complicated or like brain taxing, so let's add some particles. So I took the mage here and I gave him this fireball.
I love that you have the live prediction of the path.
The prediction.
Yeah.
Gotta show it all. So here, it should show it any second. Oh, it's not going to hit him, though, because I targeted the wrong tile. I targeted this one, and he's going there. He's actually making a character-targeted action set.
Oh, there we go. We have exactly 2 frames of particle going.
And that's it. I don't know if you guys heard the audio, but it shook
We
my whole
heard
audio.
it subtly.
Okay. Shaking my room there. But yeah, having a lot of fun with that, putting the particles in and turning it into an actual game. I still don't know what I want to do like for the map and the world and all that, though. But if anybody in chat has ideas, drop them in. Let me know. Or shoot me an email. I'm kind of curious. Trying to come up with something cool.
Here's a really quick question, though. Could you introduce lighting into this scene, knowing that you already have everything that you have there? Or are you trying to forsake that? Because the shadows are really dark, like it's a dim lit room, while the rest of the area is bright and happy and explosions are going off.
Oh yeah. That's all the art right now is just 100% placeholder. I haven't actually added a light. I think it's the default directional light that I haven't touched. And that's because I can't decide on an environment. 2 days ago, it was a sci-fi thing floating over outer space with warped fields underneath it. And then I flipped it back to grass because it was too distracting. Oh yeah, it needs to look pretty, but I want to get all of the core functionality working and then make it pretty. The last thing that I really want to get working is some targeted attacks, so you can pick a move spot, pick a target, and then have it kind of auto adjust to that target instead of shooting the tile. Not that that's a hard thing to do, but I need to add that in there and then figure out which abilities are going to work which different ways, and then set up. I want to get at least like 6 or 8 characters set up that are semi different in how they play, so there's some stuff to screw around with, and then make it look pretty and fun. But yeah, I've got to get the kind of the core stuff working. Is somebody to the top left video stuck? Is it? Hopefully not. All right,
I think they were asking it to be moved to a different spot.
Oh, it might be. I don't know. I'm going to start the giveaway now. So if you entered, good luck. If not, then come back next week because we'll be doing it again. Do another giveaway. Let's see who dies first this time. We're not giving them a prize. I just want to watch.
First kill.
Yeah, first blood, huh? Pop it up. There we go. Who's going down? Oh, everybody's. Oh, you got a bomb in the back. That's that twisted liver. Getting low.
Bomb on bomb fight.
Oh, yeah, it's a wizard bomb. He's way back there. He's the lowest, but watch him make a comeback.
First round.
Oh,
there we go.
There's one.
Yep, it was the first one
Twisted
out.
Liver Studio.
See, now I need to do that morphing where it morphs between the characters instead of just instantly popping. I need to do that.
Absorb
blending.
every enemy.
You gotta go. Yeah, that's even better. You just blend every time with whatever you beat. Become some weird monster. That would be fun. I mean, it probably wouldn't, but it sounds fun. All right, so we'll let this run in the background. I'm just gonna kick that over to the side there. That was too much fun. And then there was a question earlier about multiplayer stuff, and since I was a little bit showing my multiplayer setup already, I figured we'd pop it up. And it says, when discussing multiplayer, can we have a discussion on or video on server/hardware considerations? And I think that this depends a lot on what type of multiplayer game you're building. If you're building one like where you self-host your servers, then that hardware and server consideration is really just around the matchmaking services and any other services that you're providing there, where you're probably not going to want to stand that stuff up yourself, and you're probably going to want to use some external service, at least in my opinion, until you get to some big scale. I would go with some pre-built service that does the matchmaking and then hosting, allowing the self-hosted stuff. When it comes to like actual hosting servers, though, do you guys have thoughts on this? If you're going to do like some dedicated server hosting and you're setting up stuff for it, what do you guys think about there?
So when we're talking about dedicated server hosting, the first thing you have to understand is it's just a process like anything else. There is no magic behind it. So depending on how active it is, it's going to cost more resources and be harder to maintain, which is why when you're looking at FPS games and the likes, there's a lot of statements about how the server runs at lower FPS than the clients. And that's because the servers are trying to run like a ton of instances at once, and every frame is basically going to cost the server more performance to process. So a lot of servers, if you're taking a 60 FPS server and you're trimming it down to 20 FPS, you might be getting around 1/3 of the performance cost. There are factors that don't scale with FPS, but the grand majority will, and this is why this matters. Now, the first part is you can lower your hardware requirements a lot for the server compared to the client, because there's a lot of stuff that you don't need to be visually frame perfect. The second thing is you don't actually necessarily need matchmaking solutions. If you're having just distributable servers, there's a lot of services that will do that for you. For example, if you're just using Steam, you can make a server process run, and allow players to be invited into it through the Steam pipe. So there is an entire API for this. You can literally just make a call. Hey, I want to connect to this side through my friend list to somebody else. There are ways you can do this with external services as well, where you just distribute the server. One thing I would be worried of is how are you able to distribute it? Because if it's the same exe just running in different modes, you might have a problem trying to give it to other people. And if you want easy hosting for your players without you setting up an entire service for this yourself, you will want to distribute the dedicated server files regardless of whether they buy the game or not. So for example, with Terraria, we have it on terraria.org. At the bottom, you can literally download the dedicated server of the latest version of Terraria and then play on that, regardless of whether you, and host on that. To actually play, you need a client, but the server will work without any assets. It's a literally boiled down exe that's like 4 to 8 megabytes big. I don't recall the exact number.
Jeez, that's tiny.
Yeah. And when it runs, you get to pick the world. Now, regardless of the hardware requirements, one thing I want to point out is you want to make sure it's very easy to start it up, because if you try to make a dedicated server with Minecraft, if I recall, you actually have to have like a specific version of Java installed, and you have to let a file generate and then change a boolean in that file, in the config of that file, to say you accept the terms of agreement or something like that, and only then the server will actually run for you. And you still want to run it with a certain bat file so it can have like more RAM and whatever. If you can just make an exe that you double click and it just works, it's going to be way easier for you. So just be mindful of that. Like, it's not just the hardware requirements, it's also the user hassle requirements.
Yeah. I think you want to make it self-hosted ideally if your game can do it. If not, then you still, when it comes to actually picking hardware, it's rare that you want to actually like be dealing with and managing that stuff yourself. You usually want to, nowadays, I don't know anybody that doesn't just use cloud services as their default until they get to a point where they're at a scale where it makes sense to do something else. But they usually go with something like Amazon or Google or Azure. One of those options for actually standing up servers. Now, Unity's got multiplayer too, which would do it and probably ties in really well with their systems. I haven't set it up on that for a multiplayer game myself, but then again, most of the ones I've done were self-hosted too in our own data centers. So, but nowadays, I think the majority of people I know they're doing them through a cloud service. They build it up. It's easy to scale, switch, and adjust. And then, if your company gets to the point where you need a full team managing your IT stuff, then you have them do that instead. You don't want to be the programmer that's also building the servers. I mean, you wanted to do that back in the 90s. You don't want to do that anymore. And you didn't even really want to do that in the 90s. You just had to. So. Okay, let's see. There was a comment about the battler. Apparently it's freezing on the screen occasionally and working behind me. I assume that's just Restream not catching the stream for some reason, not sending out my second shared window, but it's still sending out my video. So I guess if you see it freeze, let me know in chat. I'm kind of curious.
I mean, from my perspective, I think you probably see the same thing. Actually, you might not. From the frame rate's very low on the your computer screen, but I can see it quite fast in your video screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's probably the screen sharing stuff. Just freaking out.
It might be prioritizing a webcam for frame rate and not prioritizing a screen for frame rate, expecting the screens don't really update
probably
that often.
That I'm not showing a game playing.
You're doing a slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a message in chat about MMOs being different. And I think it's important to note that MMOs, like the way you do the servers most of the time, are very different because you're not allowing people to self-host at all. You don't want, just like with a FPS or in a shooter, you also don't want them self-hosting. That said, a lot of the times, even with MMOs, a lot of the data, if it's not transient, will get shoved into memory and not necessarily always saved into a database. On EverQuest 2, for instance, all of the data would get pulled down and then compiled into a big binary that was stored on the server and then read into shared memory for all of the instances. And it was literally just a performance optimization to minimize memory requirements. So they could run a whole bunch of zones and have one copy of all of the content data. So it does, usually you're going to have all that stuff in the database and stuff, but I wanted to just note that you still may end up packing and tightly packaging all this stuff up together so that you can run it, like Yora was saying, in as small of a package as possible. And we would, of course, strip out all the art and all that other shit on all of the server builds for any MMO too, except the colliders. Keep the collision stuff, but not the visuals.
You don't even necessarily have to keep the colliders, by the way. If you're just trying to sync from one player to the other where the other player is, you can literally just send the transforms and let the clients deal with the entire collision stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, this was for the NPC pathfinding in the MMO. Is the why we needed the colliders and the nav meshes.
Yeah, it really depends on what kind of game you're making, and there's a lot of stuff that you can literally just say, yeah, I don't care in the server, just take down that information. Also, another thing that should be brought up is on hardware requirements. There are games that read files on the fly, even on the server, as you play. One really good example of that is Minecraft's chunks. So the world is infinite, in quotations, but it's way more than what your server can handle at a single given point in time. You can't load an entire Minecraft world on a regular server at once. You don't have enough RAM for that and other resources. So what it has is chunk loading, which basically means as you get into an area, the game will load that specific area for you. And as an area stops getting used, it will be unloaded from memory. But you actually do a lot more file reading that way, because if you go back to the first area, it has to load it back up all over again. So the reading speed for your files, depending on what kind of service your game is having, is going to actually matter hardware-wise.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. You got to have SSDs, in my opinion, at least, for everything. Especially on your servers, though. Like, you got to have fast drives and fast drive access. Also, just reminding me, sorry, of like, again, EQ2. It adjusted or affected, I can't get my words out, the server startup time too. So having faster drives, and I remember when they did a big upgrade of the servers, swapped out the drives and the CPUs, and startup time was way faster. And it's largely because of disk access, I think, more than anything else, because the CPU usage wasn't that high. It was largely just reading and reading and reading. There was a question here, Andrew. I wanted to pop it up because it mentioned you. It says, do you think that Azure DevOps repos, which are Git repos from Microsoft, plus LFS, can be a valid solution for pushing bigger projects like Andrew's to get source control? So
I'm glad you read that out, because I was reading ifs plus ifs.
LFS, yes, which is the large file
system. Storage system. No,
I
don't even storage. I think it's storage.
It's large file something.
Yeah, it's every single time I think about this, I get confused because I keep thinking of ECS. I think it's storage.
Yeah, I think you're right. Does it? Have you used Git? What do you use for source
storage
control systems? Like what's
So I've used Collaborate in the past. And really mostly just as a connecting with the artists I work with, so that when they import something into Unity, I don't have to re-import it and risk doing it wrong. That always caused errors. So Collaborate saved a lot of headaches once we started using that. Just now, of course, Collaborate's gone. So now it's Plastic. So now we use Plastic. And, just before the stream, I was actually talking to Jason. I was saying I need to add Plastic to my RPG project and figure out how to exclude certain folders, like all the assets that I could just re-download from Package Manager. The project itself is like 40 gigs. It doesn't need to be 40 gigs. It's not going to be using most of that content. I don't want to remove the content from the game right now because I don't know what I'm going to be using at some point, and I don't have to worry about, downloading again just to see what's in there. And I'd prefer, like I'm sure many of you, just having things there ready to go when I want to use them, knowing full well that I'm going to replace a lot of the sounds, a lot of the particles, if not all of them, later. But yeah, Plastic is what I've been using.
On that note, there is something that a lot of people don't necessarily know off the bat, but when you use any version control software, you can specify things to ignore. And with every Unity project, there are actually files that you want to ignore because they're auto-generated the same way for every single user. And while they are good for speeding up the editor, you don't actually necessarily need to sync them because they're just derivative assets that don't actually have any meaning. So the very important thing here is there is a library folder that gets generated every first time you run your project if it doesn't exist. And this library project folder holds a lot of those kind of derivative assets, and it's the grand majority of your project's file size. Like, I can guarantee off the bat, every single time I'm looking at a Unity project, about 2/3 of it is just the library folder, if not more. And you don't need to sync that. You can sync just the assets, the packages, and the project settings. Yeah.
And the root. You want the root folder too for
Yeah.
the C# files, the project files.
Yeah, those are generated too, though, to be fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but you still want to sync the root in case you have anything else there that you're placing down, like auxiliary assets unrelated to the Unity project specifically.
I think with Plastic, you'll kind of get that automatically. It's just going to get those folders. And then with Git, you want to make sure you use the proper git ignore, the Unity git ignore, right?
Yeah. And Jason's story specifically has this structure where he has the actual project and then underscore, like in that, the first subfolder is the U project, which is Unity, and he might have a separate project, which is the CS stuff that he's making like in his own library to consume. So now they get synced together because Unity is just a subfolder of the actual folder that he's syncing.
I'm watching the end of the battle real quick. Congratulations to oh no, it didn't end. There was one more fighter out there. I thought GSP won, but there was a worm waiting. Okay, we'll watch the final battle.
What a worm waiting for the end.
The JetBrains rider license. All right. Bam, damage. See, now I need better particles. All I have right now.
They are chunky.
Yeah, they both have. What is that?
Sky Shark's not
90 and 205 health.
Yikes.
So, what are they? They're both warriors. That's why warriors get 50. I think it's like 50 health per win. So they got like bonus. They got like a big bonus or whatever it is on a warrior. They get a pretty big bonus. That's all they get though. So then it's
you know what this means though.
All warrior worms next week.
Maybe.
Nerfs incoming.
Nah, not if a warrior wins. Warriors never won, I don't think.
Dragon Warrior.
I probably will forget. This is a close one. I don't know what worms do. He seems to be healing a little bit. Yeah, the worm was definitely healing. Congratulations, Sky Shark. Shoot me an email, jason@game.courses, and I will send you your rider license. So, someone won last year as a Dragon Warrior. Isn't that the name of the... no, that's something else. Getting things mixed up real quick. All right, let's hide that, minimize it, and there were a couple questions here. So, on the question on this LFS thing, my quick answer to this was yes. You can definitely use Azure DevOps. I think it's probably still free up to 100 gigs, or it might have been up to a gig, whatever it was, or a terabyte. I forget. It was some crazy amount that it was free up to. With LFS, it should totally work. I've used it before for Unity projects. It's totally fine. Now I'm using Plastic too, though, just because it's built in and it's like the Unity one. I want to again get familiar with it and kind of really just be able to talk about it a lot. So there was another question on servers too, and they were wondering, do you know anything about turning on more servers on and off? And it was kind of in the context of MMOs, that MMOs turn on more servers and scale up, and it's not just MMOs that do this. So I thought it would be an interesting one to just briefly talk about the auto scaling. When it came to the actual MMOs, most of the time, the way that it actually worked was that each of the areas that you would play in, like the zones or regions or whatever, would run in a process, and that would be one process. It could be a multi-threaded process, but it'd be one process, and there would be maybe 1 to a dozen or maybe even 2 dozen different zones running on a physical piece of hardware on some big probably like a quad CPU box that had a lot of RAM. They were relatively big, powerful systems that were in a rack, so that it'd be as few of them to manage as possible, and the IT guys could do that. And the way that we would scale them is that if a zone was starting to get a lot of usage, we would migrate and move all of the other things off of that box, or just kind of dedicate and pre-give it power. It's a lot harder with the way that most of the games are architected to actually like scale up a small area of stuff, because all of the things for that are in that one process. So some of the games also started spreading out some of these services, so that not everything is running in that process, so that maybe NPCs are run by a process that's scalable, and it doesn't have to necessarily be run in that server process. And that allows you to kind of scale up a bit more. But the majority of the scaling that I've always seen tended to be reducing the amount of processes on a system, so that one process can eat up more of that usage. Oh, we got a spam bot. Didn't see that.
With
anyway,
with the multiplayer though, I'm listening to you all talk about this, and I'm thinking, man, I hope the Unity one. I have no intention of using it anytime soon, so it doesn't really matter. But I hope that the Unity version is just the easy button. I want the easy button when it comes to this, like, because I understand the concepts of spinning up new servers or clustering, or for all that. But honestly, I don't want to have to think about it. I'm sure a lot of people agree with me.
Because there are costs to doing this wrong, and you're paying active money for the server that you're running. So depending on your game, those costs change a lot. So it's a person by person case.
Yeah, and when you've got thousands of people playing it, it's every little bit of pennies count at that point. But when I'm just thinking I want to try out a game and make it multiplayer, I just want to make it easy and not worry about making decisions I don't have to make right away.
Yeah. In regards to offloading services, one thing that's been more prevalent lately is that there would be a separate chat service compared to the game services. And I think you've been showing that off earlier, didn't you, Jason?
It's funny. I actually have that in. It was my background here on the screen, because I had it up there for a video that I was working on with Stream's chat service, which is actually really freaking cool. I'm gonna have a video probably this week about it if you guys are curious too. But yeah, you split out all of these things. We would always split like chat services, like general game services, like social type stuff. Inviting to groups and guilds and things tended to be all on separate servers versus the gameplay stuff. And it makes it a lot easier to, I think, manage things and to scale that up, but also to just build those systems. You don't really want all of those things in your game. At least I don't. And to be honest, like, I hate building these things again. Like, I talked about it. I don't want to repeat myself, because I just talked about it in this video I was recording yesterday and today. But like, it's building chat services is a lot of freaking work. It's a nightmare. Like, it's super simple at first. You're like, oh, cool, I sent a message and it works. And then you start adding all the extra crap, and it's like a nightmare, like keeping track of messages when people logged in, sending direct messages, reacting to messages, and dealing. There's a whole bunch of crap. It gets to be a giant pain, especially once they start switching to other servers, going in from like world chat to game chat, and then direct messages, and then routing all those around. It's just giving me like all these flashbacks of writing all the code to send the message to the game server, to the social server, from the social server to the other game server, from that game server to the player, and then I gotta write all the code for that network message and then make it show up. Yeah, it's definitely the kind of thing that I would service away for sure.
Yeah.
Which is why I was talking about it in the video, because services make things a lot easier.
There's a lot of stuff that go into sending messages around beyond just the text itself as well. There's the problem of trying to keep things localized. So when one client tries to send like a command and the server it might be running in a different localization, how does the server tell the player in their own language what's actually happening? So there's the ways to figure out what kind of response you want to send in a way that can be unpacked on the client to be a specific thing. Or when the players try to send like smart information, one thing that's like really big in games where you find randomized items is sharing them in chat. So Path of Exile, Diablo, you can click an item and it would put a chat snippet that's actually packed information that you don't get to see as text, but it's like item ID, colon, the stat numbers, the seed, the level, whatever have you. And then on the game, you're actually just showing it as like a smart item with a pretty orange link because it's legendary. And mousing over it will show you the actual item icon. Those things are actually pretty complicated as well.
Yeah, I remember having to do all of those too, and having to add in new ones when you want to be able to share and show new stuff. That was, I actually had a lot of fun doing that. I would not want to do it again. It's a nightmare getting it all working right.
Yeah,
And then when people start screwing with it and trying to send invalid data, I mean, we've seen examples of that semi-recently with some games, right?
Yeah, New World and giant sausages.
Deal with all those things. Jim had a question in chat I wanted to just pop up, and they said, why should I use Unity services rather than Epic services when Epics are free? I haven't used Epic services. Have you guys dug into Epic's gaming services at all?
I have dug into it, but I don't know Unity side well enough to compare them.
Oh, okay. What does the Epic side offer right now? Do you know?
I'm not comfortable enough to talk about it because I was mostly trying to make sure the Epic Game Services like actually connects and works, and I was doing it specifically in the context of trying to see, just for my own personal experiments, can I make a game with XNA have that working? So maybe I could say we can actually do this with Terraria. And when I was trying it, XNA is so old that the overlay doesn't even work for EGS. So, so this is not an EGS at all. It's a deprecated service. It's not been used for 11 years. Like it's not been in development for 11 years. XNA specifically. So
Yeah.
not putting it on anyone else, but there is a problem there, and I managed to get the authentication up, and I've seen a lot of the services like backend things I can access, but I didn't dive deep into them.
Fair enough. Yeah, I haven't myself either looked at them. I know that Unity's got a pretty big free tier when I was looking through the pricing, but I don't know how that compares to what Epic's offering. I have to dive in and see what Epic's actual service offering is. So next time people ask this question, I can give a good answer. I really don't know what the difference is. I mean, Unity just released theirs, so I'm still getting somewhat familiar with just all of the things you can do with it. So I'm gonna dive in and I guess figure that all out. If anybody knows in chat though, if you know any differences, I'd love to hear them too. Just share it and let me know. Oh, somebody mentioned in chat, Mark said, did you see that Ryder released a pair programming plugin? No?
So there you go. And it actually has a page on duckplay.com. I think it's that one, at least.
Let's take a peek. I have not seen this. This sounds really freaking cool.
It might actually be a different one because it's not recent. Marek, are you actually talking about this tool?
It sounds like he was talking about an official one.
Yeah, but that's the first result that I got as I'm going through this.
Let's see if I can find it here.
So there was a question from Ed Evans. Yuri, what would it take to port away from XNA for your game? The question is not what it would take away, because we can probably overnight make Terraria switch from XNA to FNA, which is pretty up to date. The difference is, if we do this, we're opening up a ton of new bugs and different implementations of things and raising the minimum requirements for the game. And it would really, really suck if somebody plays Terraria on the minimum specs and suddenly we update the game and they can no longer play it. And we're trying to avoid that. We try to respect that the product that you bought is going to keep working for you as long as it can. And I respect that hardware probably increased by miles for the years. This is something that's still beyond my own decision. So, just for reference's sake, though, we can move to FNA. We are using FNA for the Linux and Mac distributions of Terraria. because those released later. So we set the bar there. Yeah.
All right. So this is that code with me. This is the, I believe, the one he's talking about. Interesting. I have not tried this. Does it work in Rider or is it just IntelliJ? I assume it works in Rider. Interesting. So how does this work?
Does this mean I can invite everybody watching my streams to help me code?
Maybe. I mean, it might. I honestly don't know.
That would be an experience.
Like if they could just pair, I mean, depending on what they can do, like it looks like it's just updating live, like they're just sharing a screen. That seems really nice. Anybody that's tried remote pairing before, I've done it a bunch of times, but it's always a pain in the ass to be able to like share the actual keyboard and mouse and screen and stuff and make it so that multiple people can type without like it breaking constantly because you moved the mouse. So this seems neat.
The one question here, though, if you're doing pair programming, who gets to commit the version control?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just something fun to think about.
Because you gotta commit back and forth, right? After when you switch pairing, when you switch back to the other person, the other one's you gotta commit.
Their page does say swarm programming, so your whole team can work in a single remote collaborative IDE.
No, and I would imagine that if you're doing it like that, and you're doing it with a team, like I should probably talk to Chris about this evolution because he might actually have some experience with this. But if you're doing it with like a mob or a team, I would assume that while you're going around, like whoever's working on stuff or whoever's driving is committing, and you're doing it relatively constantly. This looks really cool though. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this. I want to check this out and try it. I definitely think that's neat. I need to find somebody to pair with now. It looks really cool.
Jason Story was mentioning last week. He was in the mood for some pair programming, and I was busy working on the Treant, so I wasn't actually doing any real coding. But I think I'll try this out with him, with Story, at some point.
There we go. You just have to say his name 3 times.
Oh my God!
Somebody say Jason.
Story.
He shows up. Yes. So
would this work if I tried this with Johnny too?
Johnny,
well, I tried with Johnny. I thought we were saying dots, and Johnny would appear. It didn't work. Maybe we needed a mirror and some cow blood.
Oh, you didn't bring your mirror and cow blood?
There's a mirror behind you, isn't there, Jason?
Right over there.
Isn't there one behind you as well?
I was going to say sorry I'm late, but it seems I arrived at exactly the right time. So all good.
Here you are.
That's hilarious. Welcome, Jason. So did you see that Rider plugin, that pair programming thing?
It's not quite a Rider plugin just yet. JetBrains have the same core for all of their platforms, so most of the stuff is supported. But there's an extra layer of complexity when dealing with Rider because they've written all of the resharpery type stuff on top of it. So long story short, it will most likely probably come to Rider. It's just not there yet. So now it's the other IntelliJ applications. But yeah, I'm on board. Like, I'll be honest, the amount of times I do pair tutoring sessions and people ask me for help, and it's like either I screen share or you screen share. Count me in as soon as I can actually have both of us type on the one thing. It'd make life a lot easier.
Yeah, I think
we should try the Duckly pair programming tool later because that seems to be already for Rider specifically.
No, yeah, give that a look.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So it's this one right here, right? Looks like it.
I like the name.
Duckly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're programming with IntelliJ. Oh. Lots of audio. Yeah, I have to try these out though. I'm excited though to just do a little bit of pairing sometime soon. One day. Like I said, I need somebody to pair with and something to pair on. Usually when I'm coding now, I'm like random idea, go code it real quick, and then I'm gone. So I feel bad pairing with somebody because I'd be disappearing on them constantly. So what have you been up to this week, Jason? Anything new going on in the story game development?
Basically, mostly it's work stuff. I've been busy with work and busy with life. So I've I think people have noticed I've sort of suspiciously dropped off the content creation game for a little while, but it'll come back in a few months. I just have a couple of things I want to deal with first. But I've been quite busy. In a good way. Things have been keeping me occupied, I guess, is the way I'll put it.
Nice. Interesting projects.
Yeah, and to my surprise, all the old tech stacks are still there. For example, there's always been ebbs and flows with things like VR and AR.
Mhm.
They come into fashion, as in like you'll go through, somebody somewhere will ask for it, and you'll get like 6 clients simultaneously ask for it at once, and then it'll disappear, and no one will talk about it for 6 months, and the same thing. So I was quite surprised to say that I got an AR, a VR, an NFT, and a desktop application client project all at the same time. So it's this big myriad collection of ridiculous things that people want me to make. So yeah, it's been a busy and interesting few weeks.
It sounds like a big variety of stuff. It's definitely interesting.
What kind
Yeah.
of tools are you using with those?
90% it's Unity, some plugins and things off the asset store. I'm writing a couple of my own things using .NET, and I finally moved to .NET Core for a lot of stuff. I've been avoiding that for quite some time because they've renamed a lot of the libraries that I've been using for the last 8 or 10 years and deprecated some of the features. And I'm like, I don't mind learning a couple of new things, but when you're pulling the rug of like 8 years of experience of tools out from under me, less likely to use it. But when you see the performance specs for the speed for even just like a string reader is like, I think it's something like 3 to 5 times faster just for the exact same line of code. It's like, okay, I have to switch. So been writing my own backend stuff, some API stuff, using HTTP client to parse APIs. Mostly Unity, though. To be honest, it all ends up in Unity. That's kind of where we are at with a lot of the client stuff.
Nice.
So there was a question in chat about the Mastermind Discord groups from last week. I did send those emails out. If you didn't get one, please send me an email. This is only for people who submitted themselves in a group. If you submitted it and you didn't get your Discord invite, let me know. I thought I got them all, but I know a couple emails bounced back, so I assume people put in the wrong email address and stuff. I was also going to open up the area for people who were forming mastermind groups and have already formed them and looking for a couple more people or didn't get to come in last week, so that they can go in and just get into a group if you want. And then I think sometime in the middle of next week, maybe like a Wednesday night or something for me, so like 12 hours off of this in the middle of the week, I want to do another session just for people who are in different time zones that like this is not a good live time for them that want to get into a group. So keep an eye out for that. I'll probably send out an email about that and then post it on. I'll talk about it in the on the show next week too and give an exact date. But I'm thinking probably like Tuesday or Wednesday of next week or something. Give everybody lots of time to prepare. And it doesn't take long. It's a half hour to an hour. Hop in, find yourself a good group, and we'll get them all set up. And I've got that actually open. It's going to open up in 20 minutes. So if people want to join, there's a link down below. And all you got to do is run over to the spot. And I'll explain it in a little bit if people want to jump in. But I know a lot of the groups formed and I've been kind of like watching them chat and talk and stuff. It's really cool, like seeing them, like some of them jumping into game jams and doing other things. So I want to try to make it as easy as possible for people to get into these things. All my automations for it broke though, so I sent everything manually, and I probably missed some people. So let me know if that's the case. Let's see. One more. I want to answer this one real quick, and then go on. There's a, before I get distracted and go in there again. How do you submit for a group? So here, let me just. I'll 30-second overview. When you get in, if you want to join the group, just go to this little Mastermind teleporter. It might be actually where you go in initially. There's a setup of different areas. This is every time, like in 1 hour chunks with the UTC time. If you walk over and you hit X, it'll show you the Eastern time and whether or not it's on that same day or the day before, because time zones get a little bit weird. There's a rug for each day of the week for the next meeting time. So the next one would be the Sunday call. So if you were doing one, some of the groups have calls today or already had their calls today. So Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and so on. And I put the dates there just to make it really obvious. All you got to do, go to the spot that makes sense for you, the time that works for you. If there's enough people there, you have enough people to form a group, maybe 4 to 6. Send me an email with the lists of those emails, and I will send you the Discord invites and everything else. Greg said that his Discord didn't invite, so send me an email with that, and I'll try to fix it after the show. I won't be able to get it while we're live and stuff. Oh, and for this email, 4.2, you're missing the S, game.courses at the end. That's why the email bounced. So it's jason@game.courses. If you leave the S off, it'll bounce. But oh yeah, for joining a group, just go to the table, the rug that makes sense for you. If there's a rug over an hour to the right or the left that makes better sense, you go there and then find a group of people. Last week we had 100 or so people in there, and I think there were 13 groups that had put together out of it, which was really cool. So if you're interested, like I said, I'll leave that up, and you can join in whatever it is, 20 minutes at 11 o'clock. It'd be pretty open and relatively self-directed. Go have fun, and I'll hop in there for a few minutes too. Anyway, you were saying, sorry.
No, I just wanted to bring up that question as well, because it's important to let people meet up together. Those mastermind groups have a lot of value, and also lately in Jason Story's Discord server, we've been having a lot more conversation about interesting stuff like that.
Yeah, I find
we did have a spirited debate for like 2 hours the last day, which was interesting.
Oh, what were you guys debating about?
Which topic do you want to pick first?
Yeah, we bounced around quite a lot. There's a good 5 or 6 different things.
Yeah. We had a pretty interesting discourse regarding whether Unity's documentation is adequate at letting people find what they need to find, and how much of the content that is actually in the documentation is covered on the example assets or YouTube or the likes. Because there's a lot of methods that make a lot of code way shorter and easier and more intuitive, but a lot of people don't know it, and they teach other people. So other people don't know it either, and they teach other people, and the method keeps degrading over time. It's kind of a weird process to see.
I've always found the Unity docs to be sometimes helpful. Sometimes they are helpful. They've got some interesting examples. Oftentimes they don't have much information at all, and I get lost, especially as less lost these days than I used to be, but before I would get really lost. I always thought it would be really neat if people could just submit cool code examples using topics mentioned in the docs, so that somebody could, just have a whole lot more of examples. Because oftentimes I'll go to the docs and be like, let me look up this new thing that I've never really used before. And then I'll look at the doc and go, okay, that kind of makes sense. And then I'll Google that examples, just looking for people having examples. It would be great if it was in one-stop shop.
Yeah, and there's a lot of small nuances to that in regards to when you actually find something in the documentation, it doesn't necessarily always explain the context to you. And my own argument, my own side, was that Unity's documentation is actually great and flawless and perfect and good. And then I keep having small Swiss cheese holes getting poked into it, because there are things that I know that people fail to find. And even today, I found one such example, as I mentioned earlier with dots. So even though the documentation, in my own opinion, is great and adequate, and I don't have an issue finding what I need to find, as long as I read the entire thing in advance, I do see the point that it's hard to find things off the cuff.
And I'll admit, my side was very much too much the opposite too, which is I have an extremely high bar standard for educational material. Because a lot of people make content that's educational, and that's fine. But I still, to this day, don't think people realize how much research and micromanagement goes into making good educational material, right down to how people learn, how to pace things, choosing literally each word in a sentence correctly, moving parts around in a structure so that it explains things in a better way, choosing which path to take in what you're teaching. Long story short, my expectations for good learning material are quite different, because I approach it from the same process I approach client development or product development for clients, which is I've learned that most things boil down to a use case or expectation, and then all of the other stuff comes with it. The best example of this being something you learn while doing something else will infinitely stick with you more. If you're a kid playing and you learned something like you learned math while counting something in a game you're playing, you'll learn math a lot better because you've got grounding experience, practical, hands-on, blah, blah, all of that. And similarly, if you're trying to learn something, the way people approach this online is they Google something. They're not going to Google, vector 2, what are the functions of vectors? It's like, no, nobody's doing that. What you're doing is saying, I have a problem. What is my problem? And you're searching for it and you're looking for an example. And while there are plenty of YouTubers out there covering that space, it just endlessly galls me that there's about, off the top of my head, 50 questions. Every single person who has ever used Unity will eventually type into Google or YouTube of the fundamental basics for how to do some things. And to this day, there's no example flow or project path for it. There are some example projects, but at the far end of the spectrum you can't learn from. And there's some documentation that tells you, here's how you get started. Okay, off you go. And it's like, no, but everyone wants to get to here. Teaching them how the UI works doesn't teach them how to make a menu. And then showing them a finished game with a menu doesn't teach them how to make a menu. All people want is actually here, and you're given stuff over here, and it completely defeats the point. So my standards are quite high for this stuff, and I admit that a lot of people don't do it. So I'm not judging Unity specifically. I just think that education is something that you can't just put content out and it works. There is a structure and a learning path concept. If you want to actually teach someone and not just show them stuff, you have to engage with the process of how they choose to learn it, and it's a much more complicated topic.
And on that point, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, do you guys think that they're removing Unity answers because of what you guys are talking about here?
They're not removing Unity answers. They said they're not going to remove it because people were upset.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I wonder if part of that was that issue though, of people finding old, outdated answers to stuff and using bad stuff, or if part of it was just the info there's sometimes outdated. Because I know I find stuff in my searches all the time that's like, okay, I could do it that way, or I could do it a better way. Half the time I got to make sure.
My guess would be that it would be the out-of-date thing in general. Is that if I was in charge of Unity educational material, I admit I would be pretty worried about having a community-driven support system, because as good as it is, you get that problem that we've all had too, where it's like how to read input from the keyboard in Unity. It's like, cool, let's spin the dial of time. Are we talking about last week, last month, last year, or are we talking about? There's everything changes so often that it's very hard to have a solid answer. So that constantly moving goalpost can be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, and especially with the more advanced methods like vector-free project on plane, or the entirety of the MathF class and the cool hidden gems that you have there, and they're suddenly getting dashed into certain tutorials. There are a lot of stuff that are used, but are used not in the way they're intended to be used, and that it can be incredibly frustrating.
Actually, on that side note, just because it was interesting with the Unity Learn thing. So I don't want this to turn into Jason rants about education for an hour, but just want to do one thing. Unity Learn is the perfect example of 8 steps forward and 2 steps back, because to me, Unity Learn is doing exactly the right thing. It is a workflow sequence where it shows you we're doing this, goes through it, and makes it. But here's all of the reasons why personally I don't use it, and I have a strong feeling a lot of people don't use it, is because one, they're so focused on having something shiny and visual that it's putting a barrier, because you're trying to limit. Unity have a general perspective, and you can tell by their content production, they'll never give you a white box demo. Nothing in Unity will ever in a video ever show you a white box and a white cube. But the funny thing is, that may have the connotations of something being weaker or smaller or look lower quality. But what it also is it's friendlier, and it looks like something achievable rather than showing them 3D models and demos and examples. So one, it's got a higher bar that looks like I might learn this, but you're putting me in this project and there's all this stuff around it, and that's going to just confuse, scare, and make things harder to work with. Two, it's using a custom platform, which means there's a barrier to entry in terms of getting an account in, going through the system, or more accurately, in my perspective, they're using the classic article format of this long, heavy documentation that brings you through a series of steps with next pages and things, which are good for a paid course because you're in the paid course and you're probably taking it consecutively over a period of time. But to go back to my original point, people don't take courses like that to learn things. They are doing it to solve problems. And so if I'm Googling, how do I X, and I find Unity Learn, and they give me this, like, join us for a week, but we step through the entire process of doing this thing, it's like, I don't want that. So the best way to do Unity Learn is keep that structure, but make a simple project and do it in a way where it doesn't require it, like the full course layout structure, and do the full Unity Learn stuff for a paid course on higher content, which is what they did do at one stage. But the point is, if you want to get high engagement with that stuff, it needs to be something which has a shiny outcome, simple examples, and bite-sized stuff. I do get occasional complaints on my YouTube video that I leave it on, for lack of a better word, cliffhangers, but that's because I want people to end a video fully with me for the next step. If I was to try to race through and get to the next pieces, then you'd loot, like, to get from white box to shiny demo that Unity's giving, you have to discuss animators and shaders and going through all the other stuff. And some people might expect that and they'll be let down. And some people might expect that and be too afraid to even take the course. So there's so much going on subconsciously in what you're showing by just showing a shiny picture and then a long string of course structure, that to actually teach someone, you have to engage them with where they are, which is, I have a problem, I want to solve this problem, do it in steps. If instead of all of this stuff, it was just a white box with some menus and an animated GIF of you moving up and down the menus and selecting elements, and then it was how to make a menu in Unity, and it was a thing that you could read and consume in one page, guarantee it would be, everyone would prefer that so much more. And if you did that, one for menu, one for pause systems, one for levels changing scenes, like scene loading system. If you did this in a, like, there's an animated GIF, simple structured layout, and then maybe even a companion video, like, it's so much easier than people think. You don't need to spend all of this money on a giant course platform and structure. You just need to engage with people in the actual problems they have. Anyway, there you go. Rant over.
I didn't know an hour can pass this fast.
How to make a menu in Unity is now on my short list of videos.
Brackets had a pretty good coverage of that too.
That was good. I think that's the thing. It keeps being outsourced to the internet because YouTube or Unity creators are the only people really doing it. But the problem I have is that we're doing it the best way we've figured out. We've basically been thrown a handful of people. Like, if someone's dropped a bunch of metallic parts on our desk and says, okay, make a watch, and we're like, I guess this is a watch. It's like, yeah, but the manufacturer made this watch with the pieces. Tell us how they should go together. Just give us one example of you think it should go together, please. And so, like, I just wish there was at least some expectation of how some of these systems would be used internally, you know.
And I just want to point out that this is exactly why I love the new packages so much, because with the new input system, with ECS, they actually have projects that have steps that guide you through this journey. And you can literally open up every single one of them and look at what the code is, and they explain it explicitly with just cubes on how it should look. Like, there's literally an ECS sample called Hello Cube, and it has steps, and every single step is its own scene with its own README, and that README has its own what does it show, explaining each part of this, and in the end you have clean, isolated C# files that you can open up. Like, if you just open up the 2 C# files in the one for each, go to the folder one for each, scroll down, just so you, you can literally see an explanation of what this is.
Yeah,
and if you
that,
scroll,
like, that is a like, I don't know what this is. My only complaint with this is, like I said, it's showing you what things are, not things are what things are for. It rather than just being a this is for each, it should be a let's spawn X, let's do Y, let's, you know what I mean? But it's a small subtle difference. But I would be happy with this. If everything looked like this, I would at least have no real complaints. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and actually, if you go to the physics samples and the URP samples, they actually have demos, and each one of these demos shows you exactly examples of what you should actually have for what you're doing. So the joints example actually shows you all the joints and why you don't want to use joints for, and how you can do a lot of stuff with dots that you didn't know how to do before. One thing that the new physics package doesn't have by default is, you know, those freeze checkboxes that you have with rigid bodies? Like, you can freeze position Y so things are kind of 2D on the XZ plane. That's not a thing in Unity ECS. Unity ECS is physics by default. But they're showing you how to make a joint that limits the depth of movement, specifically to whatever axis you want. So it's really neat. Like every single question I had is covered in one of these demos. It's just a question of finding out which demo is it, which is easy because it's just like going through them in a list. And there's no distractions. It's just the scripts exactly for what I'm looking for. Nothing else is being used. They're isolated by the scene they're into.
So, Jason, while you're here, this question popped up. I feel like I have to ask you. Any new book recommendations for the week or today?
Well, I've not been reading programming books recently. I've been kind of doing more of a, I don't know, personal improvement book binge because I listen to my audiobooks when I go for a wander, and that's kind of been my thing. The last one I was reading that I enjoyed was Happy by Darren Brown. That's an interesting exploration of sort of people's search for happiness over the years and which ones academically led to good outcomes and what they're for and how people approach it, and boils down to, you know, Socratic thinking, and you get into some really nice, the history of the concept of achieving a happy life, which is a very interesting thing to look at academically. So yeah, I quite like that one.
I'm adding it to my Audible list real quick. I actually got an email yesterday saying I had a credit expiring and I need to start getting back into some more books. So
I might have some soon. I recently resubscribed to Blinkist, so I might be zipping through a number of books on my backlist, and then any ones I like enough, I might jump and buy the book. So who knows? There might be more books coming soon.
Nice. If anybody else has a recommendation, drop it in chat too, because I want to grab some. Andrew, I know you got to go soon, so I wanted to briefly pull up your Minotaur, and actually, I probably got to go pretty soon too. But I wanted to pull up not your Minotaur. See, that's how much I'm on the fucking Minotaur. Man.
You just love the Minotaur so much.
It's so cool. I keep telling you, like, I'm pretty damn sure that with this game, let me pull it up. Where is it at? Where are you, little game? Let me find it. I will find it with this game right here. This amazingly beautiful. Oh, you can't see my screen like an idiot.
You can see in the
with
back.
This
there
beautiful game right here. I'm going to definitely have to put in your characters, like the tree. You have a mage character, right? Something I can use for a wizard. I can just use like the human, right? Or is there a better one? What would be the best mage out of your characters? Like a wizard, witch, or something?
Well, there's a evil. The Weeper statue has robes, but it's like a undead thing. So if you have like a necromancer, then that. But otherwise, I would go with. We don't have robes for the humans at this point, so I would go with the humanoids, any of them, but put them in some like leather armor that looks really cool, clothing and leather armor and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
There's also the serpent warrior, which is mage-like, but it's a snake. And
there's the Medusa. Like I can think of there's a lot of characters that I want to use. I just want to have one that does some magic too, but I think that it doesn't have to necessarily be a human, because who needs a human, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That was another pretty good book. I actually vaguely remember that one. And Reality Plus.
Yeah, that guy does
check it out.
YouTube too. The Subtle Art guy does a lot of YouTube stuff on this channel.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check out this Reality Plus added to cart. Check it out. So yeah, I brought this up though because I had seen your characters and I was like, man, a treant would be freaking cool in there. I had like a orc and an ogre and a couple big ones, but they're not nearly as cool as these. Like, these guys just look freaking awesome.
I really love that randomizer you added, so that like you could literally, because it's one of those things that people don't think about. You could stack 50 of these up side by side, and you won't get that really annoying in sync bobbing, which is so frustrating with idle animations. That's a surprisingly big feature.
It's one of those things where I think, why didn't I think about this 4 or 5 years ago? Like it's not new. There's nothing new about it. I'm sure people, developers have been doing this. It's just I hadn't thought of it until suddenly I was presented with multiple idle animations and thought, I should just blend this. Oh, I should make it automated. Oh, I should randomize it. Oh, I should let you choose the min and max values and let it randomize based on that. So you can customize it, but then randomize it. It's like, oh, duh. Oh, well.
I'm getting really tempted to just buy this now and just mess with the shader so I can make the charred thing have like glowing yellow and make the tree ink black, and then it would look like a completely different metallic type of like weird weird spawn golem, alchemic golem.
Yeah.
Iron, like yeah. It's really fun to see something with a lot of potential and then trying to make fancy shaders for it. So I might be guilty of that.
Shaders are
Also, I think my
absolutely one of
camera
those
shader
things.
bugged out.
I think your camera shaders is bugged out, but yeah, shaders are one of those things that it's hard, but at the same time, once you start, especially with the visual graphs, once you start playing with it, it's like, whoa, this is really cool. You can do so much with this.
Yeah, this guy's freaking awesome. Well, I dropped the link in chat so everybody can go check it out, see it for themselves, and grab it while it's half off if you want it. Or is it in a bundle too?
It is. It is in the Monster Bundle. If you scroll down, it will be linked there. The Monster Bundle number 9, along with Dragons 2, which are meant to be like younger versions of the Dragons, Fishman, and Metal Ghost Knight.
Okay.
And there is an upgrade price. So if you do get if you have one of these already, then this bundle will be cheaper. And then if you buy the Treant, this would be cheaper as well. So you'd still get a deal on the bundle.
So it's technically cheaper to get the Treant first and then buy the bundle?
Yes. Yes. You get a $55 off the bundle. So the bundle would be $95 if you have any one of the characters. Unfortunately, the asset store doesn't let you stack up to. So if you have 2 of these characters, it won't give you twice the discount, which I think it should. I prefer that people could just pay the difference and then be done with it. But that's not there yet.
Not supported yet.
Yeah.
That's cool though. It's definitely a very cool a cool set. Yeah, I'm excited. The funny thing is when you look at my my art pack or my not my art pack, my plastic history for that project, you see like the 3rd commit is imported Infinity PBR assets. Again, I think I mentioned this before, but the only reason that I had to undo that is that my laptop, it not only does it have a shitty GPU, which is kind of an issue, but not that big of a problem, has a tiny hard drive with no space. So I was like running out of space from all of these high definition assets. I actually cleared it up though 2 days ago, and I cleared like 100 gigs of crap off of there. So I'm ready to actually upgrade it to real models again. I was using like, I think the pack that I picked, I actually went with it because it was like 100 megs or 200 megs total for the whole set of them. And I was like, okay, that'll fit. It's like that will fit on my hard drive on this little laptop. So now that I've got space, I'm ready to actually go to something cool in HD and figure out like what the environment should look like and how it should feel. I want it to look more like this and less like, little cartoon characters. I want it to feel like, there's a real battle going on, like a D&D style battle in a world, maybe even hiding the hexagons in my world underneath and stuff until they're moving. Yeah. So it's gonna like only preview them and then show the regular world like nice and fancy and kind of pretty like this environment. What environment is this, by the way, that you're using?
This is our Book of the Dead conversion one. So this is the Book of the Dead we converted a couple years ago to the built-in pipeline. Along in that process, I also made some new shaders because not all the shaders convert, so I had to make some new shaders, and also made a bunch of new Substance Painter things to redo some of the textures. And in some cases, I think our textures look better because they're higher resolution than the photo scanned textures that the Book of the Dead originally came with. But for the most part, it converted well. There's a few bits and pieces. The wind, of course, doesn't work quite the same. There's a few things that didn't convert over, but for the most part, it did. And this is what the result is. So that's on the asset store as well.
Nice. Yeah, it looks cool. I was thinking about, I want something like that, or like the Nature Manufacturer kits or some of the ones I was using first. Again, had the hard drive space problem of like my hard drive can't fit all these. But now that I've cleared that out, I think it's going to be very, very cool. So go check this pack out if you haven't already grabbed it. I dropped the link in the chat. I'll drop it one more time. Go check out the Treant pack. And that's not this $150. That's the if I go back 2 tabs, or there it is, $27. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah,
so slightly cheaper. I wanted to get the people going for the masterminds who wanted to do that, but first I wanted to see if you guys have any other just interesting topics or things you want to mention or bring up before we wrap stuff up, or if Andrew's got anything you need to talk about or share before you gotta go.
I've got to go, but I did just share the link to the standard shader conversion of Book of the Dead in case anyone want to check that out. It's just $12. Since I didn't make Book of the Dead, I just did all the work to convert it. So it did take a while to convert it, but it was worthwhile. I think the result is good. So it does not it can convert to HERP except for the standard the special shaders I built, but it's not meant to be reconverted back to HDRP. I think Unity needs to do that on their own. So I gotta go though. I'm gonna sign off for now. So it was a great chat. I'll see you all later.
All right, man. Thanks
Bye.
again, Andrew. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so one thing before we go is that the Steam sales are up right now. So just remember to browse through all of that and figure out what you want to get. Because from what I'm seeing, a lot of good games are going on sale recently.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Steam sales are always great though. I love these things. I always feel like I get worried about them because ever since I released the game on Steam, I get like these emails saying, "Hey, your game could be up for Steam. You're not allowed to talk about this." And I'm like, I never remember like, am I allowed to talk about this Steam sale yet or not? Like,
Yeah, the Steam partnership program. I get the same problem. It's like you always get that like month warning or whatever to go, hey, get your stuff ready. It's like, okay, I always forget who gets which emails.
yeah, like, am I allowed to talk about this yet? So, was there anything really cool that stood out for you, Yori, that you grabbed already or wanted to get?
Me and my friends are kind of looking into what we're going to pick for multiplayer games to try and play together. Right now, we're just kind of trying to get everybody to buy the same game, so we're trying to pick something that's sensible for everybody.
Oh, okay. Are there any contenders?
There are, and I'm trying to figure out where my list is.
Fair enough.
Yeah. My keyboard isn't working. The thing with the camera that happens where it blacks out, it also kills my keyboard, and I have to actually go down and unplug it and replug it. So I guess that's not happening now.
All good. Well, if anybody in chat has a game, drop it in.
I finished the Ascent a while back. That's on 60% off. That looks like it's probably worthwhile, especially at that price.
Astroneer is also at 50% off, and Orcs Must Die, and
Orcs Must Die I'm probably going to pick up. I did actually play it before, but I played it back when it was on Stadia exclusive. And so now that I can actually just put it on my Steam library, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll probably pick it up.
I'm still questioning whether I should pick up Back for Blood because of what I've heard about it, but I really want to have another Left 4 Dead kind of experience. I used to play that game a lot.
I played a bit of that, and I wasn't impressed. Put it that way. I will say another one. I have a very similar reaction though to Ghostwire Tokyo. I've heard it gets very dull and repetitious very quickly, but it's stylish enough and it's got some interesting look to it that for half price I wouldn't mind jumping in just to try it out.
On that note, also Monster Hunter Rise is 50% off, and that's great for multiplayer. Like, this is genuinely one of the most fun multiplayer experiences I've had in the past 2 years. And
we
they
should
have
play
a DLC
sometime.
coming soon. What?
I've only ever played it single player.
Oh. It's the fastest Monster Hunter yet, which in my own opinion is a pretty good thing because Monster Hunter World was so slow paced that I could sleep while playing. But this one, I'm actually actively like dashing and jumping and running over walls, and it's way more fun.
Nice.
There is a very bad case of wanting to recreate it every time I play it, because the systems are all integrated together so fun. And I know there is this one project with Unreal Engine 5 that remade it, and I want to have that kind of experience too, so I keep looking at it. I think we brought it up a few shows ago, that if you Google Monster Hunter Rise Unreal Engine 5, there is somebody who literally recreated the project with all the fancy new features and like motion matching, and it's way higher quality.
This one right here?
Yes.
I'll drop the link in chat too.
This person also, by the way, has a video showing how he recreates animations and how he redid the models. It's like all by reference entirely, their work, supposedly.
Huh.
Yeah, and you can see like a lot of small systems throughout this video. He shows like his heat freeze, and there are some implementations of the system. Yeah, that part, and also showing data tables for all the balancing and stuff. Like you can make an entire game almost by yourself. It also has links to all of his references in the end, by the way.
Yeah. It's only 8 minutes. So I assume it's not going too deep. Just more of an overview of how he did it
Yeah.
all. Neat. That's very cool.
I used to watch the same thing for all of the Zelda recreations in Unreal. There's a whole series of people who've made multiple locations from the Zelda games and put it in Unreal with all of the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, and people recreate Genshin now too. There's already a couple of assets that are looking like exactly somebody said, okay, Genshin Impact exists, I guess I'm making this now. Yeah. Interestingly, there isn't a sale for Unreal Engine that's going on right now. That said, they did finish like a pretty big asset store sale recently, marketplace, I should say.
Oh, did they? I'm way out of date on my Unreal stuff. I feel like I need to catch up. I'm trying to find this link. So
and
go ahead.
one more thing before that. The Ukraine mega bundle on the Unity asset store is actually ending in a day and a half from now.
Oh, I thought it already ended.
Nope.
Still up? Oh, well, yeah, I'll link that too then. Everybody check that out. It was a good deal too. So let's share it real quick. Oh, it looks like it's got 1 day, 12 hours. I thought it said that on Friday though. I'm confused. Okay, anyway, it looks like it's still up. Yeah, I got this a while ago, and the first pack that I used was the sci-fi shader pack. I grabbed that and pulled it in instantly. Started making all my characters hologram out. Yeah. Oh, this one's really cool too. The sci-fi base. I have that one. There's lots. I mean, I have all these now because I have the pack.
If there is any single pack I'd recommend out of this is the Epic Toon VFX 2 pack. Everything from Hovel is straight up gold.
Yeah, this one's pretty good. I have the 1 and 2 pack. Is this the one that I was using in no, this isn't it. I looked at this when I was looking at my particles for the fireball that drops down. I forget which one I ended up using for that though. It was something slightly different. All right. I guess I wanted to get everybody into Gather who wanted to join a mastermind group. But Jason, did you have any other important stuff you wanted to share or talk about real quick?
No, fire away.
Okay, cool. But then, yeah, if you wanted to get into a mastermind group, there's a link down below in the description. I will drop it in the chat as well. All you've got to do is run over to the rug or area that is for the time that you want. Or so first find the time that works for you, and the day of the week. So to go find whatever time is good for you to meet for an hour. I'm going to start this over. Mastermind groups and meet once a week for an hour. It's a group of like 4 to 6 developers, talk about what it is they're working on, how the progress is going, and help each other out. Usually go around with like little 5-minute introductions, talk about what we've been doing, and then go through problem solving rounds and try to help each other with any problems that they're stuck on. Try to limit it to about an hour. Sometimes people go a little bit longer, but about an hour once a week on a regular basis with the same, generally 4 to 6 people. Some of the groups are a little smaller, some are a little bit bigger. If you want to join a group, it's really simple. All you have to do is join and click the link, come over to the time that works for you, and then go step on the rug. Find a rug that's got a bunch of people or a set of people on their time and day of the week that works for you. Like this one is set for Monday, Tuesday. The colors are all the same. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way through Sunday. So actually Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all the way through for whatever hour. If there's a group there's enough people there to form a group, or you already have a group and you're looking for more people, like this one right here. Looks like there's somebody on a spot already. Then just go there. Once you've got 4 to 6 people, send me an email with the email addresses, and I will send you the invites so you can get the group going and get it all started. Today we're just doing a little mini version of it because I didn't pre-announce it. I just wanted to let people who didn't get in last week and we're trying to get here this week to jump in, or people who have a group already and are recruiting. So if you see somebody that's sitting on a tile or on a rug by themselves in a time that works for you and seems like it might be a good fit, I would go talk to them real quick. Just hop on and check, because they may already have a group of 3 developers and they're looking for one more. There were a couple people who messaged me specifically saying that they were in that scenario and wanted to find a couple more people. So if you're looking for a group, again, just join it. It's super fun. It's really helpful. And I think that it's one of the best things that you can do for your game development. And it's totally free. All you got to do is click on it. Somebody said that the links to their mastermind groups were not working in Discord. So send me an email and with the one that I sent you, and I will try to fix that and figure it out. Anyway, that was it for the masterminds. It looks like people are jumping in. It looks like we got up to 18 now. I'm not going to manage it heavily directly, so just get in there and find your group, send me an email, and I will get it all working for you.
No running around for a cup.
No, you can run right. There's go-karts, though. You can hop on a go-kart and speed around, and then there's a portal at the end of each side, and then right here is the portal to go back into the main room. So if you want to go back and forth, you can portal back and forth, and then you can portal into the main room and go hang out over at Jason's little couch or something if you want. But I would recommend just going to the mastermind stuff, because there's nothing else going on right now there, which is right here. Walk on. All right, that said, I wanted to make sure to tell everybody to also hit the like button and subscribe, and drop a comment if you watch this later with a time that's good for you to do mastermind matchmaking, or just saying hi, whichever one. Somebody asked if I would consider making the tabletop project public. It'd be interesting to see how I handle a few problems. I was actually considering that, just making it like open sourcing the code part of it. The hard part comes down to dealing with assets and art and all that. It makes it really, really difficult to open source it. I'm more than happy to share the code. It's just difficult to do like a whole project sharing, but I'm going to do as much as possible with that, especially around the multiplayer setup and the kind of game state and logic. I want to do a full video on how to deal with the simple state machine and multiplayer and all that stuff. I think it'd probably be useful for people. If so, again, let me know. Hit a thumbs up and all that stuff. And anybody that's looking for the room, it's just by the little obelisk in the main thing. All right, I'm going to shut up now because I'm running out of breath and I'm way overheating. I titled this thing that it's hot because like it's 100 degrees in here and I'm sweating. Oh, it's like people are starting to pop up and gather. All right, guys, you got anything else you wanted to share or talk about? I feel like I just blabbed for like 5 minutes straight.
I'm just glad it's someone else for a change. Feel free. Take as much air as you like. It's good for me to put a pause on my essays every once in a while.
I feel like I'm running out of air. All right. Well, I guess if we don't have anything else, you just wrap it here and then come back next week. See everybody in a week with some interesting new stuff. I'm going to have a couple new things, I think. I don't know about you guys. Anything big going on? You guys have anything big going on this week?
No, but I do hope to get into a playable situation with my dots where it actually feels like a game and has a core game loop, and maybe I'll be able to share that. I'm not sure. Not committing to anything. But I am saying it would be nice if I can.
Nice. What about you, Jason? Just work or knocking out all these contracts and making a bunch of happy clients, or?
Yeah, like I said, I'm very focused on things at the moment. There's a lot of stuff going on that I'm pulling me in different directions, and I've decided to take my own advice. I read a lot of these books on how to be productive and project management and all the various things, and the general takeaway is don't spread yourself too thin and don't make promises you can't keep, and a lot of other things in that vein. And so the general takeaway for me is you need to pick a goal, stick to it, and put all your energy towards those goals. And so I have 2 goals at the moment, and unfortunately they're not content creation at the moment. So when those goals are under achievement, then I will come back to this stuff. So yeah, but it's good. Like I said, I think everything is moving in a positive direction. And I think when I'm done with what I'm currently doing, I'll have a lot more free time to focus on content that'll probably come along a lot better after that. But yeah, so just generally trying not to do too many things and too many pies at one time, you know.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. It's easy to overload yourself and then be less productive because there's too many different things going on. So yeah, I totally with you. I hope to have some big announcements for next week, but I guess we'll We'll see. Like you, I try not to tell anybody I'm doing anything until I'm positive now, because I don't want to overcommit to stuff. Right? I get ideas and I commit to them in my head, and that alone is enough pressure now that like having it out there makes it overwhelming sometimes. So.
I got a message again, even just today, asking about the part 2 of a video I did months ago. Going, still not did part 2. It's like, yeah, well, that's what I get for saying there'd be a part 2. So that's still haunting me. So I'm going to be very careful with that in future.
I've been getting that about my my series on a third-person shooter game that I think I started and stopped 1.5 years ago. I did like 6 videos, and I was like, I don't really like this, and I never really finished it. And it reminded me of why I don't like to do series, because I just do it all at once. Because you come back to it 1 year later, like, 1, you're not interested, and 2, it's not fresh, and you just want to redo the whole thing. You don't want to continue it, right?
Yeah, and in my case, like I said before, I'm very militant with the way I structure educational material, and if something's not working, I won't continue. And so I had a place I wanted to go with that particular series, and I felt like the place I was to the place I wanted to go, there's too much of a hop, skip, and a jump that I would need 4 videos in between. And so all of a sudden it became a bigger project than I thought it was going to be. And so I was like, I'm not going to continue this until I can find a way to structure it in a way that makes more sense. So that was my personal problem. But hey, if someone gives you that comment, you can always say what I said in response, which is, I'm sorry, you can have a complete refund.
Imagine making a YouTube video, though.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I've got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I can't say anything yet. Keep it secret. Keep it secret until it's done. All right. Well, I guess we'll shut up now and say goodbye to everybody. And remember to hit thumbs up, subscribe, share, and all that stuff. And drop any questions or comments down below. So let me find the button, and then I'll say bye. Bye.
Bye.
Good luck.